Galatians 4:17, God tells us they zealously affect you, but not well. Yea, they would exclude you that ye might affect them. But it is good to be zealously affected, always in a good thing, and not only when I am present with you. Here the Apostle Paul is coming to these Galatians, and he says that there was a time where they had a deep love for him. There was a time where they were zealous about what God was doing in their lives. There was a time that they loved so sacrificially that they would have given their own eyes for him if he needed them. Then he goes on to ask what many men who preach the Bible straight find themselves asking people. He comes to him and he says, am I now your enemy all of a sudden just because I'm preaching the truth that you don't want to hear? He tells them that there was a point that they loved him. They were zealous about what he was preaching, about what God was using him to say. And now the fact that he's preaching the truth is actually bothering them. He tells them the problem is that they have been affected. And though it is good to be affected and to be stirred to action and to be zealous about something, the folks that have crept in here at the churches of Galatia, they've crept in and they have affected these Christians away from their Christian zeal, away from what was right, away from what God had intended. You know something? Every one of us is either affecting or being affected. And here we see that it's good for us to be affected to right. He tells us it's good to be affected always in a good thing, in a zealous way. But it's never good for us to be affected away from that which is right. I'm reminded in high school, I had a teacher, many of you would know Rick Young. He was my teacher in high school. And Brother Young, he was from Minnesota, and he liked it cold. And he always set his classroom to about 64. And when it was wintertime, he would open the windows and he'd let the cold air in. Well, there were some young ladies in our school that didn't like it that cold. And so what they did is they would sneak in before class and turn the thermostat up. They would turn it up just a little hotter than that. I want to say 68, 69. And, it would be halfway through class. Brother Young, he would kind of look off to the side and he would say, it's hot in here, isn't it? And I remember one day specifically, he went over to his thermostat and he saw that his thermostat had been tampered with. And he came back to us and he wagged his finger and almost in a joking way, but we could tell he was serious. He said, you keep your dirty fingers off of my thermostat. You keep your dirty fingers off of my thermostat. Something I've come to find in life that everybody, every individual is either a thermometer or a thermostat. Either they are the temperature that everyone around them is, like a thermometer, or they are the thermostat setting their own temperature, setting their own zeal, setting their own excitement to right. May I say here today, you as a Christian ought not to be a thermometer. You ought not to let your excitement for the things of God, your zeal for serving God, your zeal for a Christian family, your zeal for accomplishing things in your Christian life, you ought not let that be set by those around you. You as a Christian ought to decide to be the thermostat. You ought to decide to not let anybody tamper with your zeal dial. You ought to have the heart that says, don't you dare touch my temperature. You keep your dirty fingers off of my zeal dial. You know something? This Christmas season and even New Year's season, you are going to be around people that you're not typically around. I know there are folks in our class that they get a little anxious when it's the holiday season because they realize they're going to have to be around some family that are negative towards their Christian stand. They realize they're going to be around some people that are maybe not conducive to a Christian walk. Might I encourage you today that you decide today that you're not going to be the thermometer reading the spiritual temperature in the room, but you're going to be the thermostat. You set the tone. You set the temperature. Don't let anyone discourage you from that which you're doing for the Lord. Don't let anyone discourage you from your Christian stand. Don't let anyone discourage you from the zeal that you have for the things of God. Whether it be your zeal for church, your zeal for giving the gospel, your zeal for righteous living, your zeal for a Christian home and Christian values. You decide today to be the thermostat. Set the temperature, set the zeal on that which God is doing in your life, and do not be dissuaded from that. Hey, here at our church, every thermostat that's in the building, we've got a little cage around it. And you got to have a key to get to the thermostat to change the temperature. It would be a good idea for some of you listening to this to put a little cage, a little mental cage around your thermostat and just say, that person is not going to get to me. This situation is not going to change my zeal dial. Those people are not going to tamper with my thermostat. Might I encourage you today that you get excited again, first of all, about what God is doing in your life. Decide to set the temperature high in your Christian life and don't let anybody tamper with your zeal dial. Don't give them the satisfaction of tampering with your zeal dial, but you decide today to be the thermostat. We love you, folks. We'll see you tonight at 7.